Hi, my name's Jason from Forset, and today we're going to do a course on intermediate scraping. Now, we previously did a course about intro to scraping where we talked about the basics of HTML tags, scraping selector syntax, and then we used two plugins. One was called Table Capture and another one is called Data Miner. Today what we're going to do is we're going to use a new plugin called Web Scraper. Web Scraper is actually very similar to Data Miner, but it offers more capability without having to pay for it. If you don't remember, Data Miner lets you scrape either a list page or a deep detail page, but not both. So what this means is, like if you think of an e-commerce site, you have a listing of all the products, so you can scrape that. But for each of these products, you can click on the link and go to the details about that product, so you can scrape that. But with Data Miner, in the free version, you can't do both. You can't say, okay, here's a list of everything, click on this link, go here, and now get all the details. You can't do that unless you want to pay. But the Web Scraper does let you do this for free, so that's why we're using it today. This new Web Scraper plugin is actually a little bit complicated. There's just lots of settings, and so it's going to take us a while to get through. For this webinar, we're going to scrape two sites. The first site is CSO Georgia, which, as you may remember, is the exact same site that we scraped in the last class. So I just want to do it as a comparison so you can see how to do it in both tools. Then after that, we're going to scrape an e-commerce site where you actually have a list and details page, so you can see how to do that process. Now, when we scrape this first website, it is going to take some time because there are lots of settings and just lots of things I want to talk about and make sure you understand how it works. Because it took me a while to understand. So I want to make sure it's clear to you. So because of that, scraping CSO Georgia is going to take a while to get it started. But when we do the e-commerce site, because we're already going to know everything, it's going to go much faster, okay? So don't be scared about how long it's taking, how slow it is. It's just making sure, I want to make sure you understand everything before we really dive in and use it some more, all right? So let's get started. The first thing is you need to install the Web Scraper plugin. So this is what it is, this little green spider web icon. So once it's installed, up in the top right corner, you'll see that icon. And so if you click on it, you'll see it has some different things. And so one item you'll see it has video tutorials. And so this is actually what I use to try and get familiar with it and learn all the weird options it has. So there's 3 of them. I'm going to be talking about a lot of the stuff that they have in here, but by all means, you can always go back and use this as a reference. In addition to that, it also has documentation. It has test sites, which is actually what we're going to use for the e-commerce site. So they actually have test sites that you can use to practice your scraping. So you don't have to go to a real site. You can come here and just practice doing different things. And once you're comfortable, then you can go to a real site. And that's about it. If you notice though, there's no button in here to say, click here to start scraping. I'm not sure why, but they didn't do that. So actually up here at the top, it says you can either press F12 or Control-Shift-I, or you can actually also just right click on the page like so and click inspect. And that's how you start it. So just to show you, if I go ahead and click inspect or do the F12 or Control-Shift-I, you'll get this pop-up, and this very last tab is called Web Scraper. And this is where we're going to go and build all the web scraping. All right? So before we get started, let me just remind you about the CSO Georgia site. So this is a website that shows over 800 civil society organizations in Georgia. And if you click on each one of these, you'll see that there's a title, the year it was founded, just basically a bunch of information about each of these organizations. And so what we want to do, which is the same thing we did in the last class, is to get the title or the name of the organization, its address, and its email address. And that's it. All right? So let's get started. So if you don't have the Web Scraper window open like I don't, you can do the right click, inspect, click the Web Scraper, and this is the starting screen. So to start a new scrape, they actually call it a sitemap, and I'll explain that in a second. No, I'll explain it now. A sitemap. The sitemap, they use this term because you can build a hierarchy of objects. So if you think about it, we have like list pages and details pages. These are different pages, and you have to say, okay, on the list page, I want you to click on this link. And then after you click on this link, I want you to scrape this information. So you're building this map, this sitemap of hierarchy of what you want it to do. So that's why they call it a sitemap. So to create a new one, you just create sitemap. You give it a name. So I'm going to call this CSO Georgia. And if you see, you can't use spaces or anything, so I'll just use an underscore instead of a space. For the URL, I'm just going to copy this URL, paste it in, click create. Okay, so this screen that you see now is where you actually build your scrapers. Right? This root link, root stands for where the scraper starts. Like the very beginning, like it's going to go to this page that you just gave it, the URL, and then once it's here, it's going to do something. So the root is where it's going to start. And so what we want to do is we need to say, okay, once you're on this page, we need to find each of these organizations. So we need to define the organization, okay? So we're going to say add a new selector. So I'll keep it there. So as we go through this, I'm going to explain all the features. So the first thing is the ID. This is the ID. This ID is what will be used as the column header. So just try and make it unique, something that you're going to understand. So in this case, we're going to call it organization. For types, there are several different types of content that you can scrape from a web page. So I'll just explain a couple. Text, you're taking text from a page. It's pretty obvious. So like when we go to the next stage, when we're getting the organization name, the address, that's text. Link is if you're actually getting the URL or an email address. So when we get the organization email, we're going to select the link. Okay. Image will give you the URL to that image. So if for some reason you want to know the URL to images, like say for products or something, this is how you can get it. And the last one I want to show you is element. Element it's not actually going to scrape any data. When you say element, you're just defining like a container, something that has other content in it that you want to get. So in our case, this organization block that we have is an element. So that's what we're going to pick first. Okay, so you pick element, and then to actually build the selector, you click the select button. And if you notice, you get this little pop-up here. Okay, so this is once you start selecting stuff, it's going to show you what the selector is. So what you want to do is hover over the very first organization, over the name, and then once it's highlighted like this, just click. And now if you notice at the bottom in this toolbar, this is our selector, okay? Now, we don't want just this organization, we want all the organizations. So what you do is you hover over the next one and you click again. And now if you notice, it changed. The selector now says, oh, okay, this is going to be the organization slider icon, okay? But actually this still isn't correct. This is actually just highlighting the titles. We want the full organization, like the entire area of the organization must be highlighted. And that's where these keys come in. So this S key, these three keys are keyboard shortcuts. So the S stands for select. So instead of clicking the mouse, you can also press S. The P stands for parent. So which we're going to use in a second, but if you think of HTML as a hierarchy, right now we're at the title, but we need to go up the hierarchy to get to the full element container. And the last one is C, it stands for child. So it's the opposite of parent. Instead of going up, you're going down, okay? So we're going to press P until we see that the entire organization is highlighted. So I'm going to press it once. So you can see it got a little bigger, but it's still not there yet. So I'm going to press it again. There we go. So now it says that LI organization item is our selector. That's what we want. So we're going to click Done Selecting. Okay. So now at this point, you can, there's two other buttons down here, Element Preview and Data Preview. Element Preview, if you click on it, it's just going to show you what you just saw. So if you're clicking to choose your selector, you don't really need to do it. But if you're tweaking the selector, if you're just entering it by hand, then you can click Element Preview to make sure you're actually highlighting what you should be highlighting. And then Data Preview is a quick way to check to make sure that what you're selecting is correct, you're getting what you want. But unfortunately, in this case, when you choose the element selector, there's nothing to preview because you're actually not downloading any data. You're just highlighting an area on the page. All right. So at this point, it does nothing. So let's move on. So the last thing here is multiple. Because we are selecting multiple organizations on a page, we want to tell it to actually, yes, go ahead and get every single one. So we have to check multiple. Then this last guy is parent selectors. I'll get more into this in a second, but for now, just go ahead and keep it as root, okay? So that's it. We've now defined the organization. But before moving on, let me just show you some little things to be aware of when you're using this, okay? When you're doing the selector, and this is all about the selector, let's say you get started, you click here, you're like, actually, you know what, that's not what I want to start over. So to start over, just click the select button again, it erases the selector that you had there before, and you can start over, okay? The next thing to keep in mind is that if you're doing multiples, you need to be good about, or not be good, it's important in the order that you select it in. So, for instance, when we just did it, we clicked this organization first, and then we clicked this one. Okay? That's cool. That worked fine. So let me show you what happens if you don't do that. So I'm going to start over. I'm going to select the second one first, and then I'm going to select the third one. So when I do that, you'll see that all the organizations are selected, but this first one is not. So whatever one you click on first, if you then do multiple clicks, it sees that first one as a starting point. It does not look backwards. So because I started on the second one, it's going to start on the second one and take everything after it, but it's not going to get that first one. So if that's what you want, that's great. But if not, if you want all of them, you have to always remember to start with the first item. All right? And that's it. So let me fix my selectors. I'm going to do it again. So title. Now let's do the parent. We're good. Done. Save. Okay, so at this point, we have created the organization definition. Now, for each organization, we need to go inside and define the title, or the name of the organization, the address, and the email address. So to do this, this information is tied to the organization element. So you actually want to click on the organization element first. And if you see here, this breadcrumb up here has changed. Now it says root/organization. So it's saying that currently we're inside the organization element, and any selectors we add here are only going to affect the organization element itself. It's not going to do anything else at the rest of the page. All right? And that's what we want, so let's keep going. So we got the organization name, let's now add the address. So add a new selector, enter the ID of address. The type is text, so let's do the select, hover over the address, click it, and there we go. Now, before we move on, if you remember from the last scraping class, or if you don't, the content that is located for each of these organizations, like the year, the address, phone, web, is not present for every single organization. So because of that, like in this case, the selector says we are taking the third list item. which is okay, but the address might not always be the third list item. So in this case, this selector is not good enough because we don't know if it's always going to be there. So we need to tweak it a little bit. So go ahead and say done selecting. Okay. Oh, I lost it. So let me try it again. Address, done selecting, there we go. Okay. Now, what we need to do is there's this keyword called contains. And so basically it's like a search. We're going to say we want the list item that contains the word address. All right? So I'm going to get rid of this nth of type and just change it to contains address, and then I'm going to go ahead and include the slash in there. All right? And now if I do an element preview, you can see that it's highlighted, so that's good. And now if I do a data preview, you can see that all these say address. All right? So, as a side note, if you're scraping content, and you first should always go through many pages just to make sure that to see if the content is consistent, if it's always the same content and it's always in the same location. And if it's not, if it is, then your life is easy. The scraping part will be easy, but if it's not, then you have to get a little creative. So in this case, we had to use the keyword contains, which is basically like a search, all right? So just like the name, we are not doing multiple, and the parent selector is organization. So let's save it. And then let's add our last selector, which is the email address. And with email, this is an actual link. So select link, do the select, hover over the email. Make sure you don't have to do okay. So because it's a link, it only hovers over actual links, which is nice. So just hover over the email address, click it. And again, we're going to have the same problem as the address. This is saying it's going to take the 6th list item, but we don't know if it's always going to be the 6th list item. So we need to customize it. Okay, so let's get rid of this. I'm going to say we're going to take the list item where the A contains the @ symbol. Because if the link has the @ symbol, then that means it's an email address. Right? So let's look at the preview. We got it, good. Let's look at the data preview. We see email addresses. Now if you see here for link, we actually have 4 columns. So let me briefly explain. The first column is the actual text of the link, what you actually see here on the web page. Right? So in this case, it might be the email address, but in other web pages, it might just say like, contact John Doe. So it depends on whatever is actually visible on the web page, that's what appears here. The second column indicates of whether it's a web link or an email link. So in this case, it's an email link. The third one is the actual link in the URL, so it's the mail to with the email address. And then this fourth one, I actually haven't figured out yet. It's only used when it's an email link. It doesn't appear when it's a normal link. And it seems to always be the same thing as email href. So it means something, I just don't know what it is, so we're going to ignore it for now. Okay? But as of right now, we've now built the email, so let's save it. And so we've actually built all of our selectors. So if we actually go up a level, go back to the root, we have the organization, and underneath organization, if you do data preview, we should now see all of the data that we've selected. So here we go. We see the name, the address, and then the 4 email columns. And you can scroll down a little bit and just kind of confirm that, yep, it looks like everything is working properly. Cool. So our scraper is done. One other way to confirm that it's doing what you think it should be doing, if you click on the sitemap menu, there's this item called selector graph. And what this is actually a visualization of your sitemap, of your hierarchy. So it always starts with the root, and if you click on it, you'll see here's an organization. And if you click on the organization, here's your 3 fields, right? So cool, this looks good. But there's one problem left to do, and that's the pagination at the bottom of the page. As it stands right now, we've told it how to scrape the first page, but we haven't told it how to then go to all the other pages and scrape up all of that content. So let's do that now. Under the sitemap menu, click selectors, all right? And then at this root level, we're going to add a new selector. And this is going to be our pagination selector. So type in pagination for the ID. For the type, let's select link. And then let's go ahead and select. And for the select, go ahead and click on the first number, or number 1. And then go ahead and click on number 2. So if you see, we now have all of these links highlighted with the selector pages A. Okay, this is good. Let's select it. Now, this is multiple because we have many of these links on the page. We need to make sure that each of these links are followed so we go and actually get the content from each of these pages. So click on multiple. Now, click root as a parent selector so that when we load this first page, it's going to come down here and get these pagination links and move on, okay? So let's go ahead and save it. Then let's go back to the selector graph to see what it visually looks like. We open the root, so you see, okay, on the root page, we have organization and we have pagination. So if you click on organization, okay, we have the name, address, email, awesome. But there's nothing for pagination yet, okay? So we need to actually assign the organization to also be part of pagination, okay? So let's go back to our selectors. And let's go into the organization. Let's edit it. And so you can actually select multiple parents. Just hold down the control key. And so I'm going to select on pagination. I'm going to click save. Okay, so now if you go back to the selector graph, open up pagination, we now have the organization. Okay? But we're missing something because if you look on this root page, we have the first 5 pages and then we have the last page. But we're missing all the 50 pages in between. So to get that, we actually have to have pagination be a parent of itself. So that every time, think of pagination as a new page. When it loads a new page, it has to go down and get the pagination on that page too, and do it all over again. Luckily, it's smart enough so that if it sees a repeat URL that to scrape, it just ignores it. So you don't have to worry about that. So let's go back to our selectors. Let's edit pagination. And then under parent, do root and pagination, okay? So let's save it. Let's go back to our graph, open it up. Okay, we have an organization, that's good. We have pagination, which has organization and more pagination, which has more pagination, which has more pagination, and it just keeps going and going. So at this point, we're done, okay? So now it's time to actually run the scraper. So click on the sitemap menu item and select scrape, okay? So there are 2 options here, one for the request interval, one for the page load delay. To me, the biggest one to pay attention to is the page load delay. And what this means is when a new page is loaded, how long should it wait before it starts scraping? And the reason why this is important is because if you put too little time here, the scraper is going to start before the page is actually fully loaded. And so you're not actually going to get all the content. You're going to miss content. So if you're going to be scraping like hundreds, thousands of pages, I would actually do a couple quick tests with the timing to make sure that it's working properly. And then you can just run the full scraper, okay? So for now, I'm gonna go ahead and keep them both at 2000. And then you click start scraping. And when you click the button, the window's gonna pop up and it's gonna start scraping. You'll see it load every new page. Okay, so there's a new page, there's a new page. And so you have 2 options. You can just keep the window open until when it finishes, it'll close. or you can close it. And if you close it, everything that it has scraped will be saved. So it's essentially just stopping the scraper. And so when you stop it, or when it's done, you press the refresh, and now you can see your data. So at this point, you can keep scrolling. We have quite a bit of data here. And so let me just briefly explain some of this content. This first column, the web scraper order, this is a unique ID. So when you do the scraping, it's actually saving it back to the database that the web scraper organization has. And so this ID, as far as I can tell, is the ID of the record in their database. So for you, it's not important. You can just ignore it. The web scraper start URL, this is just the root URL. So for the most part, you can just ignore this too. But if you see, we now have the name, the address, then the email column, and then we have this pagination. Again, for our case, pagination is not important, so you can ignore it. But one thing that it might be handy for is like if you're going through the data and you realize there's a mistake, you need to fix something, you can use this pagination to know, like you actually have the link here, you can go to this page and actually look at it so that you can then edit the selectors and fix it, and then you can start all over again. So the pagination does help you if you need to debug your scraper. But if you're not debugging, if everything looks good, just ignore it. So we're all good. It's good with what we want. So to download the data, you simply click the sitemap menu, and then you export data as CSV. So they'll do that. Click download. So open up the file. And now in theory, like in this case, if we had it run and get every single, 56 pages, we would have over 800 organizations. As it is now, because I stopped it early, I have 80 something organizations with all this content, and it looks good, all right? So that is our first scraper. We have scraped CSO Georgia. We have the same information. And so before moving on, let me just show you a couple other little features for this web scraper. The first is edit metadata. And this is basically just when you created the new sitemap, you gave it the name and URL. So if for some reason you want to change the name, you can do that here. Or if you want to change the URL, you can do that here. You can actually add multiple URLs. If you see here, there's this plus minus button. You also have the ability to export the sitemap. And what this does is it gives you this text that you can then save it into a file, like maybe as a Google Doc, or email it to yourself just to have a backup. But basically this whole text, all this text here defines your scraper. So even if you want to maybe share it with somebody else so somebody else can start it, maybe tweak it or something, you can just send them this. So once you have this content, you can actually say create new scraper, import sitemap. You just paste this in, and then all the settings will be there already. So it's a very handy tool. It's a nice way just to make a backup of your scraper, okay? So the last thing I'll show you, the first menu item, sitemaps. This just shows you any existing sitemaps you've worked on before. So if you want to edit it, just click on it. You're in it, and you can go and do what you need to do. Okay? So that's the intro to the web scraper plugin. We scraped CSO Georgia. So now let's scrape an e-commerce site. So to do this, go up to the web scraper icon in the top toolbar, and let's click on the test sites. Okay. And so as I said before, there are many test sites, but for this case, we're just going to do the e-commerce site. So go ahead and click on it, and let's just quickly go through it. So basically, you have computers or phones. So if you click on the menu, okay, underneath computers is laptops, tablets. If we click on laptops, you have a long list of laptops, okay? And then for each of these, if you click on it, you go to the details page. And so what we're going to do with this scrape is we're going to scrape this entire list page. And then for each of these items, each of these products, laptops in the list, we're going to go to the details page and grab all that information. All right? And that's it. We're just going to do the laptops. You could make it more complicated and like scrape every single thing here, go through the list, and then get the details. But let's just keep it simple for right now. Let's just start the laptops, get everything on this list page, and then for each of these items, go and get that details. All right? So I'm going to right click, go to inspect, and click on web scraper. Oops. And then I want to start a new sitemap. So let's create it. I'm going to call this, I don't know, laptops. I'm going to copy this laptop URL. And there we go. All right. So the first thing we want to do is get, basically, the only thing we really want on this listing page is the link to go to the details page. We don't need any other information because all this other information is on the details page. So all we want to get are the links. So our first selector is just going to be the link to the product details page. So I'm just going to call this laptop link. Set the type as link. For the select, again, make sure, because this is going to be multiple, right? Because we have all these products on this one page. So you have to select the very first product or laptop first, okay? So select this guy, and then select the next one. And now if you scroll down, you'll see that all the laptop links are selected. So we're good to go. Click Done Selecting. Click Multiple to make sure we get them all. And that's it. Do save. So now let's go ahead and click on one of these links. So I'll do this first one. Okay. So now we want to define the selectors here. And here we're going to get 4 pieces of information. We're going to get the title, the price, the description, and the image. All right. So to do this, all of this content, it's tied to the laptop link. Okay. So if you think of the hierarchy, we click on the laptop link, and then we're going to get all of this content. So to define that hierarchy, click on laptop link, and now from here, we're going to add all 4 of our selectors. So let's call the first one title. It's just text. Do a select, hover over the title, click it, say done selecting. You can do a data preview, but since this is a detail page, there's only the one item on here, but you'll see we have the title. It's good to go. So go ahead and close it. Make sure the parent is the laptop link, and that's it. So next, let's get the price. Okay, so it's text. Let's do select, hover over the price. We're done. Let's do a data preview just to make sure we got it. Okay. It's not multiple. The parent is the laptop, so go ahead and save. So now let's do the summary, okay? Or the description, let's call it description. This is text, select. There we go. That's done. Let's check data preview. That's good to go. So parent is a laptop link, save. And for the last one, this is going to be the image. So change the type to image. For the select, hover over the image, click done. And if you do the data preview, you'll see that when you do image, it just gives you the URL to the image. All right? So that's it. The parent is to the laptop link, save it. And at this point, we are actually done, okay? So let's go check out the selector graph. Okay, so from the root page, we have laptop links, and for each laptop link, we're gonna get the title, price, description, and image. All right, so that's it. There's no pagination here, everything was just on one page. So at this point, we can actually run our scraper. So let's do it. I'll keep the settings there the same. I'll do start. So it's gonna, there's a product, here's a product. So it's just going through and getting every single product detail page. Okay, so that's enough. I'll close it. I'll refresh. And so now if we look at this spreadsheet, again, you can probably ignore the first two columns. The laptop link is from the listing page. So it gives you the text of the laptop link and also the actual URL. And then we have the title, the price, description, and the image source. That's it. So at this point, we can export it, download. Let's open it up. And so I stopped it early on, so we didn't download a lot of content, but you can see everything is here. And if you wanted to, you could delete the columns you don't care about, but we have all this content. So for this scraper, we scraped both a list and a detailed page, just one level. You can actually do as many levels as you need. Like for instance, we could have started, like if I click on the home link here, we could have started on this page and told it to first scrape all the navigation. So go into computers, go to laptops, and then get all these items, and then go to the details page. So for whatever you need to do, you can build as much of a hierarchy as you want, okay? And as you saw of this last one, it actually wasn't that complicated. Once you know how to use it, it goes pretty quick. So that's it. I hope you found this class helpful. Thanks for watching. Take care.